Today we'll be discussing what makes a great route runner. So the first thing I want to discuss here with this clip here from Garrett Wilson back in his Ohio State days is selling vertical. I think that's the number one key attribute that all elite route runners have, is that leading into the top of the route, they're able to make this DB think on any route, whether it's a 3-step slant, whether it's a 10-yard out like this example, or a 15-yard comeback, that it is a fade. Everything's a fade until it's not. So how do you actually do that? So Wilson, he's going to be going up against an outside shade press guy, and he's running a 10-yard out. So his game plan is, I'm going to attack this DB's leverage. I'm going to move him outside. I'm going to take the inside release, and his goal is to get this DB to flip his hips to the opposite end zone, think that it's a fade, and then slip back underneath him to run that 10-yard out with plenty of space for the quarterback to throw us open. So how do I actually sell fade? How do I actually get this DB to open up his hips? And this is not always for just man coverage situations. Even if I'm lined up right here and I got a DB who's 7 to 8 yards off, I still want to sell vertical before I make my cut to give me more space, to get him to backpedal, to get him to turn and run. And there's three specific things we got to do. Number one has to do with my speed. There's a lot of information out there about wide receiver coaches. They'll say, oh, well, you don't want to run full speed into your routes. And I'm not saying be like balls to the wall, 40-yard dash, I'm out of control speed. It wants to be a controlled speed. I would say probably like 95 to 98%. Have some control, but you got to run hard. You guys, this DB will not be threatened vertically if you're not running hard. Then the next two things you want to focus on are the frequencies of your stride and the frequencies of your upper half, aka your body language, aka your pad level. And by frequency, I mean keeping it the same. You look at Garrett Wilson here, he comes off the ball. Something a DB is looking for when he's guarding us man-to-man or even in zone is a change. Number one, where are his eyes supposed to be watching? The hips, right? So they look for a change in your upper half. A lot of guys, when they're going into a break and they have to drop their hips like Wilson does right here on an out route or maybe a comeback route, maybe a curl route, before they drop their hips, guys, because they're trying to get so low, will raise up with their chest. They'll pop straight up in the air, and that will raise their hips, you guys. We have to maintain the same hip level, same chin level, and same, ultimately, pad level. So nothing should change. I should be able to take a photo of the wide receiver at the top of the route. Here, I should be able to take a photo of him here, and then a photo of him at the break point, and right before the break point, and the pad level should look the exact same. Then same thing with the strides. A DB looks for a change in your speed as well. When he sees a change in pad level, he sees a change in strides, he no longer thinks it's a fade. He's expecting a break. So you got to make sure, guys, that we are running with the same stride frequency, same pad level, and same speed. Don't change any one of those three things, and that's the number one quality I feel that all great route runners need to have leading into a break. So now, let's take a look at Davante Adams, arguably one of the greatest route runners of all time, and we're going to talk about why he's so dangerous in press. But before we get into that, you guys, if you're a wide receiver watching this and you would like a daily workout schedule that you can follow, check out that very first link in the description below for our elite wide receiver training package. What you could get access to is 2 months of daily on-field route running, press release, catching workouts for wide receivers, and 2 months of gym-specific workouts for wide receivers. And both of those, the gym workouts and the field workouts, we map it out. Monday through Friday, you're doing this. Monday through Saturday, you're doing this. We give you the exact drill name, sets and reps, and a video example of each drill and gym exercise. So guys, if you want some more information, check out that very first link in the description below. Again, very first link in that description below. Let's get back to this video. So now, when it comes to press releases, something all great route runners are able to do is operate outside of a DB's frame. So let's play this releaser from Davante Adams. Comes off the ball, gets a little move, gets his DB to jump, and then he's able to get space on this slant. I'm going to play it full speed one more time again. Comes off. Now, I want you to pay attention to how far he steps, okay? So he's got to run a slant route, and he's got a DB who's lined up a little bit like kind of outside shade-ish, right? So he's not just going to take off and go run a slant. He's going to give him some type of move to get this DB to widen and hold his leverage to the outside. So he's got a more free slant route or free release to the inside. Anytime that we were going up against press coverage DB, I always try to think of it like you're driving and you have 3 lanes. So you got this DB in the middle lane. If you're trying to get him to jump to the inside, you got the far left lane, and then you got the far right lane. You actually have to step to the far right lane with your feet if you want him to jump. Especially at this level, you guys, a DB is always going to be disciplined. He's going to have great eye discipline. I mean, he's going to be watching my hips, right? So if I come off the ball and all my cuts are just short and choppy like these first two, he's not going to jump. But if this third step, guys, or whatever step we're trying to break off of, can step outside of this DB's frame. But when you step, it almost thinks of it like your hip and your shoulder are attached to your foot. So your upper body goes with the step. It's not going to be far outside of your frame. It's going to be within your frame. So you could drive out, but it's going to be stepping outside of this DB's frame. So anytime you're facing press coverage, guys, think of it like your hip is attached to your foot. You're throwing your hip so your body goes with the cut. So you're more balanced, more explosive, but we have to step outside of his frame. If we don't step outside of his frame, that DB is not going to move. And that's a great example of that there from Davante Adams. Okay. So now, next thing that I feel that will make you a great route runner, what makes a great route runner, is having a plan of action off the line of scrimmage based on a DB's leverage or based on a DB's alignment or how he's playing us, however you want to think of it. So Diggs right here is going to be running like this 5-yard like under route, right? So it's a 5-yard route. So that means it's a quick route. It's not 10, it's not 12, it's not 15. Let's say, for example, instead of a 5-yard in, he had to run like a 15-yard dig. And right now he's got inside shade, kind of like catch man coverage, where this DB's about 2 to 3 yards off, but he's inside shade. So his goal is to stop the inside route. So a lot of receivers, a lot of beginner receivers will come off the ball and think, okay, I got to get to the inside because it's an inside breaking route. If we do that, DB's going to get hands, squeeze us to the inside. So our game plan would be, let's attack his leverage inside, try to step outside of his frame. Let's move him to that leverage and take the outside release. And throughout all the way up till 15 yards, because I got a little bit of time, I'm trying to stack him, which means we're trying to get this DB to run behind me. But since I'm running a 5-yard route, you guys, I can't do that. I can't stack him within 5 yards. That will take way too long, and I just wanted the time to do it. He won't allow me to do it. There's not enough space. So you need to have a plan. And that's why Diggs uses something called a diamond release. And a diamond release is a great release you could use on a slant versus inside shade press or a 5-yard in, 5-yard under versus inside shade press. So he closes the space, then he attacks this DB's outside hip and outside shoulder for 3 hard steps. Whenever the DB is sitting at the depth or at about the depth of the break, you never want to try to stack him. You always want to try to pick a shoulder to attack. So for example, let's say he was lined up outside shade and we had to run a 5-yard out. He would angle this route right at his inside shoulder, right at his inside hip, attacking hard for 3 steps, get this DB to flip and slip under him. Same thing with the diamond release. So he closes the space with him initially, and then he bursts up to the outside. 1, 2, 3. And on those 3 steps, you guys, it's no different than what we talked about in the very first clip with Garrett Wilson. What do you think we have to sell? We have to sell fade. We have to sell vertical, and that's what will get that DB to open up his hips. And now I could slip under. I didn't get this big jam because I tried to force an inside release on a slant. I did not get rerouted way to the inside because I tried to force an inside release. I attacked his outside hip and shoulder, which kept spacing on the play, but also that's what gets me separation. That's an efficient route, and that's how we get space. And all great route runners have that plan of action off the line. Now, let's take a look at this next example here from DK. So something that I feel all great route runners can do is, again, take what the DB gives him. So remember, we just talked about that slant route, and I first introduced it by talking about, well, if you had to run a route that was at like 10 to 12 and you had inside shade press, you definitely wouldn't take the inside release. You're not going to use a diamond release because that would take too long to try to get back. You can't go diamond release, DB jumps, slip under, then go up to 10, then break. That would take too long, guys. The diamond release is only good for a 5-yard and maybe like a 3-step slant type of route. So what we would do in this case is we would attack him inside, try to hold his leverage, and take what he gives me to the outside. This isn't a perfect example of that. So something that all great route runners can do is take what the DB gives him. And you see this example, guys. He's got all this space over the middle. He didn't force it. He didn't get rerouted. Because again, guys, think of it like this. Let's say Metcalf has to run this dig, but let's say the slot receiver is also running a dig. That's a real concept, a double dig concept. And let's say you get rerouted way inside and then you end up on top of this guy right here. That's horrible spacing on a play, you guys. And one defender could guard 2 routes. So what he does, he attacks him inside. That's the best way to get that DB to move. Make him think we're going where he's told, do not let him go. And that moves him off the platform. He takes this outside release. And now the break's not at 5 yards. The break's not at 3 steps. It's at 10 yards. So he has time to be able to stack him, get him trailing his back hip, and can give him a move. And now let's say it was a double dig concept. It looks like how it was drawn up on paper. And that's what we call a quarterback-friendly route. So let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by Metcalf taking that outside release. We're going to move called a rocker step at the top and then winning on that dig. So now, Next thing that I feel all great route runners can do is be able to react. So a great receiver is a great reactionary receiver. So what CeeDee Lamb is running here is he's going to be running a post route at about, I would say, like 10 yards. And he has a DB lined up inside shade 2 to 3 yards off. Now, it kind of ties into what we were just talking about in the last two clips. Remember I said you want to take what a DB gives you. Remember I said you want to have a plan of action off the line, but you never want to be married to that plan of action on the line. You have to be able to react if the situation calls for it. So what Lamb would love to do right here is, okay, I'm going to attack this DB. He's going to hold his leverage to the inside because remember, he's taught, don't give up the inside, then I'm going to take that outside release and work my route. But if I go attack this DB and he just doesn't move, maybe he disguises his leverage and he jumps outside or he just sits there, I could just take it. You got to be able to react because as a receiver, we have to play fast. So watch what Lamb does. He attacks him. DB doesn't go anywhere. All right, I'm just going to take the inside release, break it off, and ball's right there. That is the name of the game as a receiver, you guys. He comes at him. This DB doesn't move. Right here, as soon as Lamb is attacking, that DB should be taking this almost leverage step inside and trying to seal off the inside. He's taught, don't let him go there. He doesn't have any help to the inside, but he just sits. And when you just sit and you have dead feet as a DB, we could just take that. Then we get skinny. We start leaning into him a little bit, break off on this post, and that quarterback has plenty of room to throw me open. So guys, a great receiver is also great at reacting off of what a DB does if he gives us a certain move.